For decades, Harley-Davidson didn't just build motorcycles, it built a culture. Leather jackets, loud pipes, and the thunder of a V-twin engine became symbols of rebellion and American freedom. But lately, that thunder's been sounding more like a sputter. Sales have slumped. The average Harley buyer is pushing retirement age, and while the rest of the motorcycle world evolved, Harley clung stubbornly to the past, polishing chrome while the market moved on. But now, in 2025, the iconic brand has finally done something different. Radically different. They've shifted some production overseas, lowered their costs, and rolled out a bike that's not only more affordable, but also aimed at a completely new generation of riders. It's called the Nightster, and it might just be the boldest move Harley has made in years. Of course, it didn't happen overnight. This is the story of how Harley-Davidson got here, what went wrong, what they're finally doing right, and whether this late pivot could actually save one of the most legendary motorcycle brands in the world. Because make no mistake, this isn't just about one bike, it's about survival. If you want to know more about other trends in the motorcycle space, or you're just a fan of bikes, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps me keep putting out important information like this to keep you informed on the industry's best and worst motorcycles. The road to reinvention. For a brand as iconic as Harley, reinvention isn't just about tweaking the design of a fender or adding a new paint job. It's about survival in a rapidly changing world. And over the past decade, Harley has had to face some hard truths. The rebel image that once made the brand a cultural symbol in the US was starting to lose its grip. Sales were slipping, and the rumble of a V-twin wasn't quite resonating with a younger generation that was more interested in smartphones and saddlebags. The writing had been on the wall for years, but 2024 made it painfully clear something drastic needed to happen. The core of Harley-Davidson's problem was its aging customer base. For decades, the company thrived on the loyalty of baby boomers who were drawn to the brand's nostalgic allure, American-made pride, and heavyweight touring machines. But as that generation began to age out of riding, younger buyers didn't show up to replace them. Millennials and Gen Z were either priced out of the market or simply not interested in dropping 20 to 30 grand on a 700-pound cruiser. Harley's bikes were seen as too big, too expensive, and perhaps most damning, out of touch. Then came the economic pinch. Inflation had been creeping up, but by late 2023 and into early 2024, it had become a full-on chokehold. Borrowing costs rose and consumer discretionary spending dipped. Harley felt it hard. By the end of the fourth quarter of 2024, the company saw a brutal 47% decline in revenue and a 53% drop in global shipments compared to the previous year. It was the kind of downturn that could no longer be brushed off as a temporary dip in demand. The business model, once reliable and patriotic, now looked dangerously outdated. But it wasn't just domestic issues holding Harley back. On the international stage, things were just as rough. A massive tariff battle had been brewing between the US and European Union, and Harley got caught in the crosshairs. The EU slapped a 50% retaliatory tariff on US-made motorcycles, a move that sent prices for bikes like the Road Glides skyrocketing to ridiculous six-figure territory in European countries like Denmark. For a brand already struggling to keep its international footing, this was a major blow. Selling bikes in Europe and other foreign markets was supposed to be part of the company's growth strategy, but now that avenue was under threat too. So Harley made a move that raised eyebrows, but might just end up saving the company. It began shifting production overseas. Specifically, it ramped up operations at its manufacturing facility in Thailand. This wasn't a brand new plant. The facility had been in place since 2018, originally intended to serve the growing Asia-Pacific market, but now it was being put to broader use. By producing certain models like the Nightster there, Harley could sidestep the punishing EU tariffs, cut down on shipping costs, and streamline its international distribution. Most importantly, it allowed Harley to lower the overall production cost of some bikes without compromising US manufacturing jobs for its larger touring and premium models still built in places like York, Pennsylvania. CEO Jochen Zeitz framed the decision as pragmatic, not political. In his words, Harley was simply doing what it had to do in order to compete in a global economy. This wasn't about abandoning American workers, it was about keeping the company alive. And in many ways, it echoed the path taken by other major players in the automotive and motorcycle world who have long used international facilities to balance quality and cost. The overseas shift also opened the door to something Harley had long struggled to deliver, a truly affordable entry-level bike with real street cred, and that's where the Nightster comes into the picture. The groundwork had been laid by the earlier release of the Revolution Max engine platform, lighter, liquid-cooled, and more performance-oriented than the air-cooled V-twins Harley was known for. That engine became the foundation for a new wave of bikes that could finally appeal to younger and more price-sensitive riders. By the time 2025 rolled around, Harley had positioned itself to re-enter the market with something bold. It wasn't just about keeping the lights on, it was about sending a message. Harley-Davidson was still here, still fighting, and ready to meet the future on its own terms. And that road to reinvention, paved with hard decisions and global pivots, might just be what saves the motor company in the years ahead. How Harley dug its own grave, and everyone else grabbed a shovel. Now let's be real for a second. It's easy to blame tariffs, inflation, and shifting demographics for Harley-Davidson's slump. And yeah, those things didn't help. But if we're being honest, Harley didn't just get caught in a storm. They built the storm shelter, locked themselves inside, and threw away the key. Somewhere along the way, Harley-Davidson forgot one crucial detail. Motorcycles aren't just about nostalgia, they're about riding. And when Harley decided to cling to the past like a pair of worn-out leather chaps, other manufacturers quietly stepped in and gave riders exactly what Harley didn't. See, for the better part of the last decade, Harley laser focused on heavyweight touring bikes and high-dollar cruisers. The logic seems simple. Double down on the loyal base, cater to the boomers, and let the rumble of a $30,000 Ultra Limited drown out the cries of younger, broke riders. But here's the catch. Those younger riders weren't just crying, they were leaving, walking right into the open arms of Yamaha, Kawasaki, Honda, and heck, even Royal Enfield. Why? Because those brands were paying attention. While Harley was busy building 900-pound road couches with more chrome than a Vegas showgirl, other manufacturers were out there crafting lightweight, affordable, fuel-injected, tech-savvy machines that didn't require a second mortgage. Honda's Rebel 500 became a runaway hit. Royal Enfield's Meteor and Classic 350 offered vintage charm without the vintage maintenance bill. Even Indian, Harley's closest rival, was outmaneuvering them with sleek modern cruisers that somehow managed to be both cooler and cheaper. And let's not forget the Yamaha Bolt or the Kawasaki Vulcan S, bikes that basically whispered, "Hey, remember fun? We've got it, come ride." Meanwhile, Harley stuck to its formula like it was carved into stone tablets. Their response to dwindling interest? More chrome, bigger bags, a new CVO with a touchscreen the size of a tablet. And don't get me wrong, those bikes are fine if you're retired and planning to ride cross-country once a year, but for the everyday rider looking for something nimble, affordable, and a little edgy, Harley had nothing to offer. Unless you count the Iron 883, which had gone unchanged for so long it should have come with a museum pass. Even their attempt at branching out with the Livewire electric bike wasn't exactly a home run. Priced at over 22 grand when it first launched, it was a cool idea strangled by a ridiculous price tag. It was like Harley finally listened to what the world wanted, then handed it over with a smug grin and a loan application. Oh, you wanted innovation? Sure, just sell your car first. The result? A giant Harley-shaped hole in the middleweight and beginner-friendly market. And the other brands? They didn't just sneak in, they threw a party. Riders who might have once dreamed of owning a Harley were now discovering bikes that were lighter, faster, cheaper, and frankly more fun to ride. The image of the American badass riding a hog down Route 66 was replaced by a 25-year-old riding a Rebel through downtown traffic, or a young couple escaping the city on a Royal Enfield Scream. Harley wasn't just losing sales, it was losing relevance. So yes, Harley faced external pressure. Yes, the economy shifted, but let's not pretend they didn't help dig the hole they're trying to climb out of now. While the rest of the motorcycle world evolved, Harley tried to keep the party going in a house that was already on fire. They made bikes for riders they had, not the riders they wanted. And by the time they realized it, the bar had already been raised by everyone else. Which brings us to the Nightster, because for the first time in years, Harley looked around, took a deep breath, and said, "Alright, let's try something different." And that decision, however late it may have come, could very well be the lifeline they've been searching for. The Nightster, Harley's long overdue redemption song. So after years of watching their market share slip through oil-stained fingers, Harley-Davidson finally stood up, cracked its knuckles, and made a move that actually made sense. It wasn't a flashy CVO drenched in chrome or another nostalgia play banking on the same buyers from 1985. No, this time they went back to the drawing board. Not to repaint the same old canvas, but to start something fresh. And that something was the Nightster. Now let's not pretend the Nightster is just another bike slapped together to fill a slot in Harley's lineup. No, this thing is strategic. It's a calculated answer to years of criticism, a love letter to riders who wanted the soul of a Harley without the size, price tag, or baggage. You want a stripped down, nimble, modern machine with enough grunt to make you smile but not enough weight to make you sweat? That's the Nightster. But let's rewind a bit, because the Nightster didn't appear out of nowhere. This was a shift born from desperation, sure, but also from a hard look in the mirror. Harley finally acknowledged the world had changed. Motorcyclists weren't just old school purists in denim vests. They were young professionals, city riders, women, and new hobbyists. They wanted performance, value, tech, and something they could actually afford. So Harley, gasp, listened. And in 2022, the Nightster debuted, not just as a model, but as a mission statement. Gone was the old air-cooled Evolution engine that powered the Sportster line since the Reagan era. In its place was something radically different, the liquid-cooled Revolution Max 975T engine, a 975cc V-twin pumping out 90 horsepower and 70 pound-feet of torque, with a red line that didn't feel like it came with a curfew. It was smoother, punchier, more responsive, and most importantly, it actually felt modern. But the engine was just the beginning. Harley didn't just shove new tech into an old frame, they redesigned the entire bike. The chassis was lighter, the center of gravity was lower, and the handling? Crisp, agile, and surprisingly forgiving for a Harley. Suddenly, canyon carving wasn't off the menu. For the first time in forever, you could ride a Harley that didn't feel like it needed a parking assistant and a back brace. Even the aesthetics struck a rare balance. The Nightster kept that signature Harley attitude, the low-slung silhouette, the solo saddle, the muscular tank, but stripped it of all the bloat. It's lean, clean, and slightly rebellious, like the younger sibling who finally told the family they didn't want to join the accounting firm. It looks the part without shouting, "I'm having a midlife crisis!" And perhaps most shocking of all, Harley priced it right. With a $10,000 price tag, it's way more affordable compared to every other Harley bike. In a market where some of Harley's touring models flirt with the $40,000 mark, the Nightster actually felt attainable. It put Harley back in the conversation with bikes like the Yamaha Bolt, the Indian Scout, and even the Ducati Scrambler. Suddenly, new riders who had written Harley off were thinking, wait, this is a Harley? The Nightster wasn't just a bike, it was a pivot, a statement, a mea culpa, delivered at 90 horses per twist. And behind that bike was a larger shift, Harley's quiet strategic decision to move part of its production overseas. A move that, yes, caused some raised eyebrows and grumbling about heritage, but let's call it what it is, survival. By cutting production costs, Harley gave itself room to build bikes like the Nightster, bikes that could actually compete in the modern market without pricing out half the planet. And here's the thing, they didn't water down the brand. If anything, they brought it closer to what it once was, raw, accessible, and rebellious. The Nightster isn't pretending to be a touring bike. It doesn't need 15 cubic feet of saddlebags or speakers that can drown out highway wind. It's a backroads brawler, a city slicker with biceps. It's for the rider who wants to enjoy the journey without pulling a trailer full of gear or carrying a second credit card just for gas. It's the kind of bike Harley should have built 10 years ago, but hey, better late than never. So yeah, this might just save the company. Because for the first time in a long time, Harley built something not for nostalgia, but for now. The Nightster is Harley's first real handshake with a new generation of riders, a peace offering, an invitation, and judging by the buzz, the sales, and the early reviews, people are finally answering. The big move. Now, while the Nightster may be the poster child of Harley's comeback tour, it didn't roll off the line without some behind-the-scenes maneuvering, and one of the biggest and most controversial moves the company made, taking a chunk of its production overseas. For decades, Made in America was tattooed into Harley-Davidson's DNA. It was right up there with V-twin rumble, black leather, and bar and shield patches. The idea of building a Harley anywhere but the US was unthinkable for a lot of longtime fans, but Harley wasn't trying to spit on tradition, they were trying to stay alive. Because here's what most people don't see from the outside. Building motorcycles in the United States has gotten expensive, really expensive. Labor costs, materials, taxes, regulations, you name it. And while Harley was still pushing out bikes, the price tags were climbing into orbit. You can only sell $30,000 baggers to so many people before the well runs dry, so Harley had to make a choice. Stick to their guns and potentially fade into irrelevance, or adapt. And adapt they did. The company began quietly shifting some of its production operations overseas, most notably to Thailand, not as a gimmick, not as some sneaky corporate shell game, but as a calculated strategy. This wasn't about cutting corners, it was about cutting the right costs. By moving part of the manufacturing to Thailand, Harley could keep prices down, speed up global distribution, and bypass international tariffs that had been choking their exports like a vice. You remember that whole trade war drama a few years back? When the EU slapped big tariffs on American motorcycles, that hit Harley hard. Suddenly, every bike they tried to sell overseas came with a price hike that made foreign buyers shrug and walk away. So building bikes in those regions wasn't just smart, it was necessary. And don't forget, Harley isn't abandoning the US. They're not turning their back on Milwaukee. The company is still deeply rooted in American soil, still making a ton of bikes here, still supporting thousands of American jobs. But they've also accepted a hard truth. If they want to grow globally, they have to build globally. It's not betrayal, it's business. Now, this move didn't exactly get a standing ovation from old school fans. There was grumbling, forum rants, people threatening to never buy Harley again between sips of domestic beer. But here's the thing, most of those same people weren't buying new Harleys anyway. They were riding the same Softail they bought in 2007 and watching resale prices like a hawk. Harley needed to court a new generation of buyers, and that meant playing by new rules. And guess what? It's working. The overseas production helped make the Nightster and its price tag possible. It's also laying the groundwork for even more affordable bikes down the road, bikes that can actually compete with Japanese and European rivals in both emerging markets and back home. Because let's face it, when someone walks into a showroom and sees a $7,000 Kawasaki next to a $20,000 Harley, the choice writes itself unless Harley can bring something new to the table. Harley's also using this overseas network to tap into fast-growing markets in Asia and South America, places where motorcycle culture is thriving, where people see bikes as both passion and practicality. These riders don't care if the engine was bolted together in Thailand or Timbuktu. They care about value, performance, and availability, and Harley's finally in position to deliver all three. It's also worth mentioning that moving production overseas doesn't mean quality takes a nosedive. Harley isn't farming this out to the lowest bidder with duct tape and hope. Their overseas facilities are modern, tightly managed, and built to the same specs as their US factories. In some cases, the tolerances are even tighter because they're using newer production tech. These aren't knockoffs, these are Harleys, just smarter Harleys. So yeah, the purists can groan, but the reality is, this global strategy is giving Harley room to breathe, room to innovate, room to bring in fresh blood without alienating everyone who loved them to begin with. It's not selling out, it's stepping up. They're shedding a little weight to fight another round, and in a world where motorcycle brands are disappearing faster than you can say V-twin, that's not just smart, that's survival. And maybe, just maybe, this is the move that puts Harley back in the fight, not as a relic of the past, but as a real contender for the future. The Japanese giants aren't slowing down. Alright, so Harley's finally dropped the weight, retooled the strategy, and jumped into the global ring swinging. Sounds great on paper, but now comes the million-dollar question: can they actually win this fight? Because here's the truth, Harley-Davidson isn't just trying to fix itself, it's trying to catch up to an industry that evolved without it. While Harley was busy polishing chrome and doubling down on heritage, the Japanese manufacturers, Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki, were out there building empires. Light bikes, fast bikes, reliable bikes, bikes that cost half as much and still outperformed the competition, and they were selling millions of them. These companies didn't wait around for tastes to shift, they anticipated it. While Harley was still betting on baby boomers wanting big cruisers, Honda was developing the Grom. Yamaha had already cornered the middleweight market with the MT series. Kawasaki was busy dominating the entry-level sport bike scene with the Ninja 400, while Suzuki quietly cranked out affordable standards and adventure bikes that punched way above their price tags. And the kicker? They weren't doing it just for fun. They had data, sales numbers, global reach. Japanese manufacturers know exactly what newer riders want: lightweight frames, solid tech, bulletproof reliability, and a price that doesn't require selling a kidney. They've built their entire business models around volume and versatility, so while Harley was figuring out how to shave a few grand off the sticker price of the Nightster, the Japanese were already selling 3 bikes in that same price bracket, each tailored to a different kind of rider. That's the mountain Harley's trying to climb now. Let's not sugarcoat it, the Nightster is a solid step forward, but it's one bike in a vast sea of options. Japanese manufacturers have diversified their portfolios so thoroughly, they've basically built a bike for everyone, from college kids on a budget to seasoned riders chasing lap times, and they've built trust over decades. You can walk into any town, anywhere in the world, and find someone who's ridden a Honda and will swear by it for life. That kind of brand loyalty doesn't crack easily. Harley, meanwhile, is still battling a perception problem. A lot of younger riders still see it as their dad's or granddad's bike. Big, loud, heavy, overpriced. Even with the Nightster showing up leaner and meaner, it's going to take years to shift that mindset, and Harley knows it. That's why they're doubling down on new marketing, new demographics, and expanding their global footprint. And again, they're not leading this trend, they're catching up. And if we're being brutally honest, they don't have the same economies of scale as Honda or Yamaha. Those companies can afford to experiment, flood markets, and absorb losses in one region while making it up in another. Harley doesn't have that luxury. They're still recovering, still tightening belts. Every move has to count. Even the overseas production strategy, as bold as it is, won't magically erase the gap. Harley may now be able to build bikes at competitive prices, but they still need to sell them to people who have never considered owning a Harley before. That's a tall order when you're going head-to-head with brands that are practically default choices for commuters, beginners, and even veterans looking for dependable fun. So yeah, Harley's doing the right things. They're finally listening, adapting, and diversifying, but they're entering a game that's already deep into the second half, and the other team has a big lead. Does that mean they're doomed? Not necessarily. If Harley keeps its focus, keeps prices reasonable, and continues to build bikes that speak to modern riders, not just nostalgia junkies, they've got a shot. A real shot. But they need to move fast, stay humble, and maybe stop pretending that every motorcycle needs to come with 700 pounds of legacy baggage. Because the Japanese giants are not waiting around. They're already working on what's next. What Harley needs to do to stay relevant. So Harley's finally shed some of its stubbornness. It's gone overseas and released a bike like the Nightster that's actually worth talking about. But let's not break out the champagne just yet, because doing one good thing doesn't mean the war is won. It just means they've finally shown up to the battlefield. The real question now is, what's next? And if Harley wants to stay relevant, if it truly wants to claw its way back into the hearts and garages of modern riders, then it needs more than just a sleek new model. It needs a full-on mindset shift. Let's start with the most obvious one, price. Harley can't afford to keep making bikes that cost as much as a decent used car. For years, part of Harley's mystique was tied to its premium image. Owning a Harley meant you'd made it, but the market's changed. Younger riders aren't chasing leather jackets and chrome pipes, they're chasing value. A lot of them don't want to own a garage queen, they want a reliable, stylish everyday bike that doesn't destroy their savings account. If Harley really wants to compete, they need to keep building more affordable bikes like the Nightster, but also diversify. Not everyone wants a 973cc V-twin. Some people just want a cool little 400cc city bike. There's a whole generation of potential Harley riders out there, if the price is right. Next up, design and technology. Let's be honest, Harley's dashboard game has been stuck in the 90s for far too long. No one's impressed by a giant analog speedometer anymore. Riders today want Bluetooth, touchscreens, ride modes, traction control, cornering ABS, maybe even a phone app that tracks their maintenance. And sure, the Nightster and Pan America have started to push in that direction, but Harley needs to go all in. These things can't be optional features on bikes that already cost a fortune. They need to be baked into the lineup if Harley wants to shed its outdated image. Then there's the issue of weight and usability. A lot of Harleys are still absolute monsters to move around, especially for new riders or people commuting in tight city traffic. Harley's bikes have historically been built for long open highways, which is great if you live in Montana or plan to retire on Route 66. But most modern riders, they're dealing with traffic jams, potholes, and stop-and-go madness. Harley needs more middleweight bikes, more urban-friendly platforms, and more bikes that aren't intimidating to ride or park. The Nightster is a step in the right direction, but one step doesn't make a journey. And while we're talking about the future, let's not forget electric motorcycles. The Livewire was a bold statement, and honestly, it was a damn good bike. But Harley priced it like it was made of solid gold and then spun it off into a separate brand like it didn't want to commit. That's not the move. Electric bikes are coming whether Harley likes it or not. They need to go back to the drawing board, take everything they learned from the Livewire, and make something that normal people can actually afford. A $15,000 electric Harley commuter would sell, but only if it looks cool, performs well, and doesn't carry the baggage of looking like a toy for boomers trying to feel young again. Now let's talk about community and culture, arguably Harley's strongest asset, and also its greatest liability. For decades, Harley's identity was tied to a very specific look, a very specific sound, and a very specific kind of rider. That image, it doesn't work anymore. It excludes more than it includes. The future of riding is diverse. It's young, urban, global, and inclusive. Harley needs to speak to everyone. That means ditching the "if you don't ride Harley, you ain't real" attitude and embrace a wider definition of what a Harley rider can be. They need to highlight young riders, women, commuters, and international voices in their marketing. They need to build new traditions, not just ride the coattails of the old ones. And finally, Harley needs to embrace flexibility. Look at what Royal Enfield has done. Clean designs, modest pricing, great performance, and they listen to their riders. They adjust quickly. Harley needs that kind of agility. The world moves fast now. Trends change. Tastes shift. If Harley's R&D and leadership teams can't keep up, they'll get buried again, and this time, no one's going to wait for them to catch up. The bottom line? Harley needs to stop pretending that legacy alone is enough. Yes, the name still carries weight. Yes, people still dream of Harleys, but dreams change, and if Harley doesn't evolve fast enough to match them, then all they'll be left with is a museum full of chrome and a fanbase that's aging out. But if they do it right, if they commit to pricing, design, accessibility, innovation, and cultural inclusivity, then Harley-Davidson might not just survive, it might actually lead again. And wouldn't that be something? What the future looks like for Harley and for the industry. For the first time in a long time, there's a sense that Harley-Davidson might actually be reading the room. The move to shift some production overseas, streamline manufacturing, and put out bikes like the Nightster isn't just a cost-cutting maneuver, it's a realignment with reality. It's Harley finally admitting that nostalgia alone can't power them into the future. And maybe, just maybe, that moment of humility is exactly what the brand needed. Because let's be honest, this new direction, it could change everything. The Nightster isn't just a bike, it's a signal. It tells younger riders, global markets, and skeptics that Harley's listening. It says, hey, we're still Harley, but we're not stuck in the past. And when you combine that shift in tone with their overseas strategy, you get something we haven't seen from Harley in decades: flexibility. The ability to pivot, to innovate, and to compete, not just with old school cruisers, but with nimble, high-tech rivals from Japan, Europe, and even India. But Harley's future doesn't exist in a vacuum. The entire motorcycle industry is shifting right now. Electric bikes are gaining momentum, developing nations are becoming huge markets, and younger riders are prioritizing versatility and value over pure heritage. Riders want machines that match their lifestyles, not bikes that feel like they belong in a time capsule. The brands that will survive the next decade are the ones that evolve without losing their identity. Harley's challenge is to do exactly that: carry forward its soul, but wrap it in something that actually fits the times. And the truth is, they're not alone. Brands like Royal Enfield and Yamaha are thriving because they understand that the rider has changed. It's no longer about who's loudest or who has the biggest chrome tank. It's about who can offer the best experience. That means smarter tech, leaner builds, more inclusive marketing, and above all, bikes that don't cost as much as a college education. If Harley keeps going down this road, if they double down on practical innovation, if they build bikes that riders actually want, and if they finally let go of the ego that's been holding them back, they might not just survive this next era, they might lead it. But that's a big if. So now the question goes to you. Do you think Harley can actually pull this off? Or is it too little, too late? And more importantly, would you ever buy a Harley if the price and performance were finally right? Let's talk in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. See you in the next video.